Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. Always a pleasure to be able to share positive insights on how we can live a longer and healthier life. Today, we begin with a study from the Sabin Research Institute, which is in Los Angeles, and it deals with a nutrient that most Americans have probably not heard of. Yet those in the health movement are definitely taking it. It's called resveratrol, resveratrol, resveratrol. And why is it important? Well, because it's one of the key nutrients to slow down the aging process, put quality life ahead of you. Resveratrol also, according to this study, may be effective against lung aging. Now remember, about 10 years ago, I gave you the biological clock. Now, this was based upon my own research of over 36 years at the Institute of Applied Biology as a senior research fellow heading the anti-aging department. I did over 164 studies. I did over 55 clinical studies with humans, all trying to see what can both prevent illness and can extend our lifespan, quality life. Now, we all know now that being locked in for the last 3 years and not having a healthy diet, in many cases, being depressed, anxious, all led to excessive stress. Stress in and of itself can age us prematurely. It certainly ages different organs because when you're stressed, certain hormones, the stress hormones, which we need in times of fighting or fleeing a situation, like cortisol, norepinephrine, epinephrine, and catecholamines and adrenaline, they rise. Now, they're supposed to rise for a very short period of time, maybe a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. But what happens when it gets stuck? Because you're anxious all day long, you've got some form of angst, some form of distress, some form of foreboding, even if it's non-specific. Or you might be a person that's just lost their job or faces losing the job or can't pay your bills or looking at a home or car foreclosure. That's a real stressor. And we can't always deal with all the different issues facing us in life, not all at once. So what happens is the body creates stress hormones. The stress hormones create inflammation. The inflammation allows a whole cascade of different type of inflammatory agents to start circulating in our body, including free radicals. When those free radicals hit a cell, they can damage it. And if enough cells get hit enough times, it can damage it either temporarily or permanently. When we're younger, we have the capacity to repair a lot of damage. After all, think of this. Your liver can regenerate about 60% of itself if you give it the right input. But your heart can't. And your brain can't, and your lungs can't, and your kidneys can't. So you have to be very conscious of what might be done to keep them as healthy as possible. And that's where resveratrol comes in, because it can actually help the lungs. In a study led by Dr. Barbara Driscoll at the Sabin Research Institute of Children's Hospital at Los Angeles, the researchers demonstrated for the first time that inhaled resveratrol treatments slow the aging-related degenerative changes in mouse lung. And lung aging, characterized by airspace enlargement and decreasing lung function, means you're just getting less oxygen in. That's not good. This is published in the peer-reviewed journal Thorax. So this is a new way of taking in resveratrol. Generally, people can get it by eating grapes or drinking a red wine that I don't recommend. You get too little, you also get the alcohol. So you may get some benefit from the resveratrol, but it's 5 milligrams. But you also get the alcohol, which can damage the lungs, the heart, the brain, the liver, the kidneys, and the brain. So better still to just take a supplement. And people are taking supplements anywhere from 100 milligrams to 2,000 milligrams. But the scientific literature is replete on how resveratrol is one of the top 10 nutrients you can consume to help you with your aging, age slower, and protect you against different diseases. And also, it has antimicrobial chemicals, and that's important as well. So it has a broad spectrum of ways it helps you in the body. This is just the latest. So you would spray this into your mouth, and that goes directly to the lungs. Different than just taking it as a supplement or in a food. Next up, I get a lot of calls. People say, Gary, which is better, a keto diet or a vegan diet? And I believe it is, without question, a plant-based, varied vegan diet. So there was a study done at Tulane University to take a look at these two popular diets, and they found that there's a big difference in the carbon footprints. For those on the keto and paleo diets, which I do not recommend, this may be tough to swallow. A new study from Tulane University that compared popular diets on both nutritional quality and environmental impact found that the keto and paleo diets, as eaten by American adults, scored among the lowest on overall nutrition quality. Hence, you get the lowest amount of nutrients, and were among the highest on carbon emissions, meaning you're destroying the environment and you're getting minimal nutrients in return. The keto diet, which prioritizes high amounts of fat and low amounts of carbs, was estimated to generate almost 3 kilograms of carbon dioxide for every 1,000 calories consumed. That's a huge amount. The paleo diet, which eschews grains and beans, they don't want you to have them, in favor of meats and vegetables, received the next lowest quality of nutrients, but the higher carbon footprint, 2.6 kilograms of carbon dioxide per 1,000 calories. This was published in the journal, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, a major journal and a good journal. So when you take a look at all the different people who are on these diets, and there was one study from the National Institutes of Nutritional Examination survey of 16,000 adults, they found that the majority were on one of these diets, but not on the vegan diet. Now, the vegan diet, on the other hand, it is the best of the best. It's better than the Mediterranean diet. It's better than the Crete diet. It's better than the Japanese diet, all of which are very healthy diets, and I recommend all of them. But as a vegan and as someone who is trying to do what I can in my own very limited and probably completely insignificant way, I took a look at the environment. Now, as an environmentalist, a real environmentalist, not one of the phony ones you see everywhere, you ask, what can we do based on all the different ways that carbon dioxide is created to lessen that impact? And also not just carbon dioxide, but there are other gases as well that can increase global warming. And I'm going to be doing a little bit later on the environment. But everyone's shifting from a meat-based diet, because there you got the methane from the cows. And then you have all the enormous amount of land that is cleared, especially in the Amazon rainforest. Why? So they can harvest the wood, number one, and two, they can then plant the grass. You'd have to see it. Let's say you have 2 gigantic tractors. I mean, these are huge. These are monsters. These are like what you see when they're mining in South America for cobalt or titanium. And I mean, if you stood beside one, you wouldn't even be 1/3 the size of their tires. And so they put these gigantic chains in between them, and they just go, and everything just gets destroyed. Everything is rooted up. Why? Because the rainforest has very poor soil, and the root structure doesn't go deep, it goes wide. So when a tree goes down deep to seek water and nutrients, it anchors the tree and acts as a good carbon sink. But when it goes wide and you have lots of rain, then the evolutionary design means that these things can tip over real easy. And I see it here. I have palm trees, almost over 1,000 palm trees I planted. And they're beautiful. They're also very short root systems. So it's very easy in a hurricane for them to tip over. And so you have to dig deep down when you plant one. I dig 6 feet by 6 feet and fill it with beautiful topsoil. That's their food. Most people just throw 1 can of meal organite in, and that's it. 1 little coffee can. No, that's ridiculous. And therefore their trees are all misshaped, and you'll see leaves turning yellow. They're just malnourished. People don't know how to take care of their plants. Well, we don't know how to take care of the rainforest. Why? Because for you to have a hamburger, you're going to be consuming meat from probably 100 different cows. Where are most of those cows raised? In the Amazon. Because they've got a huge amount of space. They've got temperature where grass will grow 12 months a year. But in taking down all those trees, you're taking down the carbon sinks, that which traps carbon. And that's why it's called the lungs of the planet. And we are really destroying the Amazon at an astronomical pace. Now, okay, so you say, well, we're taking down trees in Oregon and Washington State and in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia. Yeah. All right. But we're planting new ones. Good. Glad to hear that. But the new ones you're planting are going to take 40 years of growth before they can even substantially capture much carbon at all. So for the next 40 years, you've just contributed to the carbon dioxide levels in the air. You haven't trapped them. So planting hemp grows much faster and also is a carbon sink. So we could grow a lot of plants in every state, which is what I recommend. And when I take an honest look at everything, and an honest look, by that I mean, I'm not using any false optimism. Well, we're going to be able to handle the environment because we got Silicon Valley looking at the latest technologies, and surely that's going to help them. We're going to have a whole new generation of solar panels put in, and we've got a new generation of the wind power. Those are all incorrect. Yes, they are trying to get better batteries, but the batteries they have and the power that solar and wind collectively have to lessen our carbon footprint is at best between 2 to 5% in the United States. And to get that material, the minerals, to make a solar panel and a wind turbine, you have to dig up a lot of precious metals, finite metals. There's not infinite, there's a limited amount. And to do that, it takes an enormous amount of energy and human capital. And frequently that human capital, especially in Africa, is exploited as slave labor. And the media will not show you that. The corporate America will not show you that. Because then you say, well, wow, I didn't know there were 15,000 people working in one mine using shovels and kids 6 years older carrying 100-pound bags. No. But do we want to know the suffering that others go through? Do we want to know the cost to make a plant? All right. And the answer is no, we don't. We don't want to know where our clothes come from. We just want to make them affordable. Right. And we want plenty of them. We don't like them, we can throw them away. They're that cheap. Or if they're very expensive, we don't want to know who had to slave to get that done. Were they properly paid? No. And then the issue is, why? Well, because there's a moral responsibility to how we live, individually and collectively. And I believe that some people, not all by any means, and certainly not the majority, seem to have lost touch with ask where everything comes from. Ask what it costs. Ask, is it fair? And that's the cost of a chemotherapy drug. Two treatments, just 2 treatments with injectable was $75,000. Who can afford that except the very rich? But it's not the very rich who are making up most of the cancer cases and getting these therapies. That's exploiting a situation. Why can't we change it? The same reason we're not going to change anything on the environment. The same reason that even though I suggested that we have a national conversation, what FDR used to have in his chats, his fireside chats, where it's in his one of the rooms in the White House, have a fire on, and then talk to the American public as just directly and honestly as he could about a situation that most people didn't know how to deal with, the Great Depression, unemployment. and starvation and death. Here's the bottom line, that if you become a vegan, and a conscious vegan, where you're eating lots of raw food, especially fruits and vegetables, and raw nuts, and a good variety of them, and seeds like pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, watermelon seeds, chia seeds. And if you're having the healthy oils, like extra virgin organic olive oil, coconut oil, macadamia nut oil, avocado oil, almond oil, walnut oil, sesame oil, unrefined, and you're having plenty of good fibers in the diet, and you're having lots of berries, and you're juicing, then that's just about as good as it can get. You're not doing anything that's pro-inflammatory. You're not doing anything that causes disease. In fact, just the opposite. You're very conscious, and you're doing everything you can to prevent it. Now, I'm not even talking about supplementation. I'm not even discussing supplementation and de-stressing and yoga, meditation, prayer. I'm not talking about any of the other things. Just a healthy plant-based diet dwarfs any other diet and is light years ahead of the paleo diet. But again, people want something that's simple and that is used to what they're normally consuming. I can consume all the meat I want on the high protein diet. Yeah, sure. And all the fat. Oh, great. Then that falls within the purview of, well, I'm going to do this because it's not a hassle. It's not a stress. Whereas transferring all that into a healthier diet means you have to educate yourself, see all the different vegan opportunities, possibly read a book or two or some articles showing what it can do for your heart, cleaning up your arteries when you're eating pomegranate, nitric oxide coming from beets and other vegetables that can increase the flow of blood, lessen the opportunity for stroke. All good on one side, all bad on the other. And yet we're choosing all the bad. Now, if it was 1 or 2 or 5%, the population, okay, but it's 93% of the population. Let me repeat that. 93% of the American population consistently on a daily basis make choices that destroy their health, prematurely age them, and cause them an early death. I believe in freedom of choice, so I can't intervene in that process. I can only show people, if they choose to pay attention, what their other options are. So here we have Greta Thunberg, scripted completely and hypocritical, but her message is accurate. And that's why I said a good message, but she's not the person who should present it. And she certainly, and her parents, whoever's writing the talking points for her, when she said, you've robbed me of my youth. No, Greta, no, they haven't. You have one of the most remarkable youths imaginable. You're at the top of everyone's list of, oh, isn't she great? And you've sailed across here so that showed you were really not going to fly on a plane, whether the people that's causing the carbon dioxide in the air, but you went on a private yacht, a $6 million yacht that had to use diesel fuel to get you across. That was about 100 times more expensive than if you had flown on a plane. But who's looking? Who cares about the facts and the truth? You made your great publicity. But ask you this. Okay, Greta and your parents and all the energy behind you and all the people, how many young people have said, I'm going strictly vegan, very conscious. I'm not going to buy stuff I don't need. I'm going to repurpose. I'm going to go to a used clothes store to buy clothes. And so I don't add to someone else's suffering to buy stuff that was exploited by their labor. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to organize in my high school or junior high school, and let's plant some things that can capture, a carbon. Let's get something going to first plant 100 trees in a public space and work with the city, work with the state. And then if we can do that, then get all the high schools in our state to do it. So we're planting 1 million trees in a state. That's doing something constructive that will make a difference. We're not doing that anywhere in the United States. So we're not changing. In fact, we're eating more meat. We're increasing by 2 to 3% our carbon footprint. And China's even ahead of that. And India is ahead of us. We're the top 3 polluters. So exactly when are we supposed to get a handle on our responsibilities towards the environment. We're not. Not now and not in your lifetime. So the best that you can realistically expect, and this is not a negative or apocalyptic thinking, this is just being pragmatic, start to look after yourself, your family, and friends, and work with other small groups of people who are concerned about a sustainable world, sustainable life, quality of life, and move, and then change your life accordingly so that you can have a future where other people who are indifferent to this, it's not my problem. Oh, I got all the fruit and vegetables downstairs at the grocery store I need. That's true today. It will not be true in the next 5 years. Just want to share that. So it's more than which is a better diet. The vegan diet is the best diet in the world. All the science supports that. Going to allow you to live a longer life. But it's also one that when you embrace it, you're also embracing a different mindset when it comes to being responsible. That don't buy anything with plastic. Just don't. Stop buying plastic. We over-plasticize everything. A simple little battery is now super packed in a real thick layer. You got to get a scissors and cut the darn thing open. All that ends up in the ocean, and the ecosystem is unfortunately negatively impacted. What are we doing to clean up all the plastic in the ocean? Nothing. Why? Because we're not doing anything to keep people from using plastic in all the different ways. So my suggestion is be as conscious as the choices you can make, and that's the best that we can expect at this moment. Our politicians not going to help us. Government's not going to help us. Corporations not going to help us. Our church groups not going to help us. And our public citizens are not going to help us because nobody wants to change. That's not a negative. It's simply a pragmatic statement of fact. So, Greta, the next time you think my youth was stolen, would you ask your parents to send you to Samoa, Nigeria, and ask to visit for a day in the mines, the cobalt mines, the ones that you use with your cell phone and the ones that are made into a computer that you use? And also, let's take you to Yemen. Millions of youth there, and a lot of them dead already. I can take you to a lot of places to show you youth who really have had their future stolen. You're not one of them. Next up, there's a couple nutrients that can really combine to lower your blood pressure. L-arginine, A-R-G-I-N-I-N-E, and the B vitamins, specifically folic acid, B6, and B12. Now, there's something else that folic acid, B6, B12, and vitamin C do. It lowers your homocysteine level. What's that? That's an inflammatory hormone, along with C-reactive protein and fibrinogen, that when those are elevated, you won't feel it, you won't know it, there's no symptoms. You can have an instant heart attack or stroke, 200 to 300% more likely to do so. Now, let's just say you're taking an aspirin to thin your blood. Well, it will thin your blood, but it also kills tens of thousands of Americans every year. Just taking aspirin causes bleeding, but it also neutralizes folic acid, B6, and B12. And here's a conversation I had with my cardiologist, where I go every year to get my cardiovascular checkup. He said, well, your heart's good, Gary. Your blood pressure is 110/68. Your resting pulse is 49 to 50. That's an athletic heart. I've been an athlete my whole life, long distance runner, 84 marathons, etc. And it has a perfect beat. It's not too hard, which means it's stressed, or it's not too light. And he said, good. And he said, do you ever think about taking an aspirin? I said, well, the answer is no, because I don't get headaches, because I don't have caffeine in my diet, and I don't eat foods I'm allergic to, both of which could cause that. And I don't have circulatory problems. And if I did get a headache, I know how I could take my simple between the finger and the thumb and hold right in that little web for 15 seconds real hard, and boom, triggers a response, turn off pain. Or a lot of other things could turn off pain. Cat's claw, cayenne, at a high heat unit, etc. But I said, let me ask you this. do you take any supplements? Yeah. I said, okay. And he took regular supplements. He took coenzyme Q10. He took L-carnitine. He's also athletic. And I said, is this what you tell your patients? He said, he didn't say anything. And I said, well, am I assuming that you know what's best for your heart, but you're not going to encourage other people? He said, Gary, the simple reality is if I started advocating something that could help the heart, prevent heart attacks and clear up the arteries, the state is going to come in and challenge my medical practice. This is the reality we live in. I wish it weren't that way. It is. So as I got up, he had his drawer open there. I, shook his hand to leave. And down in the drawer were all the vitamins that I take. L-carnitine and L-arginine, the B complex, magnesium and calcium from citrate, cayenne, the things we know, coenzyme Q10, thin the blood naturally and prevent heart attacks and stroke. Also lowering your homocysteine levels, lowering your C-reactive protein levels. So on the one hand, an aspirin will thin the blood and help lessen a stroke, good, but then it increases the risk of a heart attack, bad. So why do something that you can reduce your risk of dying from one form of heart condition, a stroke, but die from another one at a high level? That to me makes no sense. Why not just do something that I guess having green juices, having lots of celery juice and cucumber and curcumin or turmeric in your diet, thinning the blood naturally? Because what happens when you go in for surgery? What's the first thing they say? Are you taking any omega-3 fatty acids? Don't. Do you ask why? Thins the blood. Are you taking vitamin C? Don't. Quercetin? Don't. Vitamin E? Don't. Tocotrienols? Don't. Why not? Thin the blood and a whole list of other things. So wouldn't it make sense then if you think you want to have your blood thinner, you should be drinking green juices? Yeah, because when your blood is not thin, it's thick. And when it's thick, you have aggregation or clumping together of fat and red blood cells. That's what can cause a clot. You would think after the trillions of dollars, $4 trillion this year spent on health and disease maintenance, that someone will be smart enough in the entire millions of people involved, over 900,000 physicians, millions of nurses, millions of scientists, someone would realize this simple fact. There's not a smart one enough in that whole group to tell you what you need to do to stay healthy. They can only tell you what they've been told to tell you. And that's unfortunate, but that's the reality. So remember, L-arginine and the B complex can lower your blood pressure. Who says? University of Hanover in Germany. Folic acid, B6, B12, 500 micrograms folic acid, 25 milligrams B6, 500 micrograms to a milligram of B12, about 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C will reduce your blood pressure, and that improves your vascular function. And celery seed extract reduces your blood pressure. And having a glass of beet juice each day will reduce your blood pressure and can save your life. So that's the latest on health and healing, taking a little extra time to go into more depth on some of these things. And I'll do one last one here, and that is from the University of Sydney, which is in Australia. Satisfying midlife relationships are linked to lower multiple chronic disease risks in older age. And I would agree with that. For those of you who are in a healthy, happy, vibrant, creative, dynamic relationship, you're in the best place you could be. Having people who you can just be yourself, and they're not going to be critical of you. They're not trying to make you over into their image of what a good partner should be. They've accepted you for who you are. And being able to work together, create together, share together, that's a terrific space to be in. For those of us who don't have that relationship, okay, then we have to do more on our own, having quality friendships that we can share a lot of the same things you can with a personal relationship that is not intimate. You can share the satisfaction of being with people who accept you for who you are, who you can find joy and happiness in socializing and traveling and doing things together. I don't think people realize how broad the spectrum of relating in a friendship can be. I can remember when back in the 1970s, I'd give a call to a friend, say, I'm going to go off to London to do some research over there. Got interviews with the 3 leading nutrition doctors in Europe. Want to come? Sure. Okay, when are we leaving? Tonight on an overnight. Today? Gary, I can't. Everybody's got a reason why they can't do anything today. Now, some of those reasons are legitimate. More often than not, they're not. And what I've found is over the different passages of my life, and there have been many passages with some outstanding quality relationships, and then to a point where something is happening, where instead of sharing the best of yourself in a relationship, people are sharing their angst, their pain, their suffering, their sense of being victimized. And maybe they have been victimized, but there's a point where you help yourself, where you ask for others' help, but you don't hold on to it. Because at a certain point, if you're holding on to it, you have to ask, what do I gain by holding on to what is clearly a negative emotion? And we never ask that question because we think, well, what is it? There's nothing to gain. That's stupid. We don't gain by being negative. Oh, yes. Yeah. Remember what it says? The squeaky wheel gets the attention. So if there's a person that's not talking about pain and suffering because they're working through it or they've worked through it and now they're into a different light, they want to be more positive. They want to look for solutions. They want to celebrate life. They don't want to be limited. Want to go out to a folk dance and festival? Nah. Want to go to the opera? No, I did that 40 years ago. Want to go see an interesting film? No, I'll watch Netflix. I see. Wow. Boy, you shrunk your life down. Really shrunk it down. Why'd you do that? And then you start hearing all the reasons. Bad relationships, don't trust people anymore, we're betrayed. Look in the mirror, don't see themselves as they once did, attractive or viable. And I'm thinking, attractive or viable based on what standards? If you're an interesting person, if you have a wonderful smile, if you have a great sense of humor, you're going to be attracted to an awful lot of people. Because boy, do we want people in our lives who have that sense of humor, don't take themselves seriously, don't act like victims. Who do we not want in our lives? Perpetual victims who can only tell their story, who complain and whine about everything, but they're going to suffer on the martyr complex. Yeah. And the older you get, you begin to self-limit. Well, I've got to act my age. Why? Who says that there's a way you must act and speak and dress and talk and eat because you're a certain age? That's age bias. So if you have a wonderful relationship, you should be thinking about how blessed you are each day. If you don't have that personal relationship, then look for your friendships to help fill that. And there's a lot you can do with friends. And that also is comforting. But have a sense of self. Feel comfortable in your own skin. The fact that we're not always with people doesn't mean we should feel lonely. It's what we fill our life with, and we fill our life with what we fill our mind with. Just suggesting. I can remember back in the 1970s doing lectures where almost everyone in the audience was young. Dr. Carlton Fredericks over in WR, he would get the people with the gray hair. I would get young people my age, in my 20s. And then in the 1980s, the same people were with me in the 70s, moved right into the 80s as I aged and they aged. We aged together. We shared together. Covered dish dinners with 1,500 people in a parking lot out in Long Island. People magazine did a 4-page positive spread on that. Doing retreats together, doing clinical studies, doing our classroom on the airs. We did all this stuff together. Health support groups, thousands and thousands of people in the health support groups. The 4 years we did the accredited, the only one of its kind, the fully accredited complementary and alternative approach to life series through Edison State College, where people got a degree from Edison State College, a BS in nutritional sciences. Those people all got jobs. Everybody wanted to hire them because we taught them the best. Marty Feldman, Howard Robbins, Donald Mullen, Dr. Elaine Kahn, all of my friends, about 25 faculty. gave them the best education possible. We had to sacrifice a lot of our time because we were teaching every night. And that's why we only did it once, because everyone says, Gary, we gave the best we could for these 3,000 students. We got to get back to life. I said, fine. So we did it. Hopefully someone else would take over. They haven't, but then they start doing other things. But that was a passage. So I've had people in my audience who've been with me all these years, some for over 50 years, doing the marathons together. And then you go off and do other parts, other passages with other people, and that's part of life. Hopefully sometimes it circles back around in there, just older. But I'm hopeful that the people in this audience realize, stop living such a small life. Stop living such a protected life, such a secure life. Stop being motivated by insecurity. Take chances, take risks. When we're young, we're not afraid to do that. When we get older, we're afraid of losing what we have. And then when we have so much confusion in our lives, it creates an emotional paralysis. So what's the point? I've done a 100-part series on this topic. Each one's about an hour. It's called Classroom on the Air. Go to Gary Null Google, Gary Null YouTube, or go to Rumble or Odysee or GaryNull.com and look under the motivational videos. Because I want people to be happy. And I've seen people in this audience who are happy. And I've seen people who, no matter what their age, I got a guy who was 95 and sent me a letter who was going to commit suicide. He didn't say I'm going to commit suicide, but the letter showed that, he had lived his life and now he was going to meet his wife who had died. So I got the card and I went up to Harlem where he lived and knocked on the door, the old little rundown house in the middle of a block, and he answered the door. He was surprised. And I said, before you check out, shouldn't you see other things you can do with a wonderful life? He played the piano, and there was an old piano, and he loved to dance. His wife and he used to dance. So I got him to come down to a health support group. We got him back into dancing. We got him into teaching the kids in the neighborhood piano lessons. He went on to live, I think, around another 9 years. And one day I went up there and he was redoing his house himself, like 95 years old. He was, putting on a new drywall in his house. He was smiling. So you see, we can, if we choose, we can start another chapter, but one that is not limited by our emotions and how we feel, but one way based on what we can do from this point forward. So according to the University of Sydney, satisfying midlife relationships, I would also suggest satisfying later life relationships. A lot of people don't want relationships later in life. They don't want everyone's hassle. I've spoken with everyone in our health support groups in our anti-aging studies. They all say the same thing. Well, I'm not in a relationship because, quite frankly, I don't want to have, someone else's problems. And that's all you seem to hear about. It's everyone's aches and pains and problems. And I don't want that. I had that earlier when I was married and had children and family. That's what they tell me. But there's an awful lot of good people out there who would make great friends. We just give them a chance to be in our lives, and we in theirs. That's it for today on health and healing and some suggestions about life. And you can go to GaryNull.com and PRN.Live for more information. We're going to take a break and come right back. Please stay with us. How long was that?
That was about 39 minutes, Gary.
How much?
39.
Okay. Why don't we do this? Why don't we take that as it is without editing it and put it right up on the other,
Okay. We can
Odysee and Rumble and
unedited.
YouTube.
Okay. Obviously,
now,
take
what I'm going to do
and such.
is I'm going to do a 5-minute segment for today's show. No, in fact, I don't want to do this for today's show. I'm going to do a cold opening on nutrients reverse the aging process today. So we'll go live at noon.
Okay. No, I'm just trying to figure out what you want to do. So you're not going to use this for today's show. That's just going to go up on Rumble and Odysee
and YouTube.
Okay.
And then I'll do a live introduction on today's noon show.
Okay.
So you don't have to spend any time editing this.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I mean, like, I felt like it was a good health and healing. And I even like noticed during it, you said this one was a little longer segment, but that's okay. So if you want, I can see if I can edit it down a few minutes. If you want, we can just go with the live and do it at noon. It's up to you.
Well, we have a brand new live study that we finished last night on just nutrients for the aging process. And I promised the audience, if you remember, that we'd be dealing today with the anti-aging issues.
Yes.
So this is good for people up there and to watch and learn from.
Okay. Okay.
And that's the majority of our audience. Last night we had 6,500 people. We've been as high as 8,000, not including progressive commentary hours. So we're going to have about 1,800 live today, maybe a little more because we're not on BAI Live.
Okay.
And we're supposed to have someone else call in today, but Luann hasn't told me who it is. Now, I want to do the promotion for Kathleen Francis. She's on every Friday at 4 p.m.
Yep, every Friday at 4 p.m. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to make a new file for the reporting. So it's a isolated file. I think I potentially know the person who's supposed to be calling in about the testimony. I believe his name was Ron Atkins.
Oh yeah, he's terrific.
Yes, that was who Luann also told me was supposed to call in, but he never called yesterday. Yeah, so that works. Yes, we can just go live at noon. All right, so we are recording, and you can do the Kathleen.
What is Kathleen Francis's show called?
It's called, I believe it's called Wise Woman.
Okay, yeah.
Just let me
Good,
just check.
okay.
I want to make
Are you ready to go with it?
Yep, it's Wise Woman.
Okay. Hi, I'm Gary Null. I'm very supportive in our society of having more wise women and wise men in positions of leadership. In fact, I'm Gary Null, founder of the Progressive Radio Network and Progressive Radio Voices. Today, we have opportunities to learn from people who've had a lifetime of experience. They've gone through all the crises one could imagine and survived and learned lessons. Around the world and in all the cultures on the planet, who are the people who guide the rest? It is the wise woman, the wise man, the elders, those who can give some temperance to issues, to stop fights, to seek positive and peaceful resolution to issues. We have one of those individuals on the Progressive Radio Network. Her name is Kathleen Francis, and she has a program every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time called Wise Woman. I've known Kathleen and her friend Don Greneau since the mid-1980s. I have seen her on many projects. I've seen her work with people. In fact, she has an extraordinary talent. She's a wonderful artist. She's also has a great voice as a singer. And she worked in Hollywood. She worked on one of the biggest studios, one of the most successful. And yet she gave that up so that she could spend more time working at local levels. Right now, it's out in Arizona, in Sedona. She works with the art community there. and she works in helping people who need help. So when I said, Kathleen, you have a lifetime of experience in so many different fields, you've met so many different people, you've met so many crises, and you're still around today. Why don't you share all that you are in a very positive way with other people who might be having a little trouble getting to where they need to go in life? And she was happy to join us. So we have Kathleen Francis, one of the most entertaining, interesting, upbeat, positive, great sense of humor, but extremely insightful when it comes to helping people resolve problems. So tune in to one of America's really unusual, extraordinarily brilliant elders. Kathleen Francis, 4:00 Fridays on the Progressive Radio Network, PRN.Live, PRN.Live. Thank you.
Are you tired of closed-minded programming? Well, look no further than PRN.Live, the home for progressive voices.